Hi Reddit. I'm 31F, and I need to get this off my chest before I lose my mind. I've lived in my parents' house my entire adult life. After they both passed away, my mom 3 years ago and my dad just last year, it was understood, or so I thought, that the house would stay in the family, and I'd be the one to maintain it. I was the one who stayed behind while my older sister Emily, 35F, moved across the country for college, career, and marriage. I was here through every hospital visit, every late-night call, every emergency. I didn't ask for anything in return, I just did what needed to be done. After our dad passed, Emily flew in for the funeral, stayed a few days, and then left. No real discussion about the estate, no checking in afterward, just silence. So I assumed, wrongly, that everything would stay how it had been. I'd been paying property taxes, maintaining the lawn, doing small renovations here and there. I even sank close to $40,000 of my own savings into upgrading the kitchen and bathroom. The house was falling apart in places, and I wanted to preserve what my parents built. Everything seemed fine. Until 2 months ago. I got a letter from a lawyer informing me that Emily was the sole legal heir to the house. My stomach dropped. Turns out, when our dad updated his will shortly before his death, he left the property entirely to her. I wasn't even mentioned. No explanation. No conversation. Nothing. And what's worse, Emily never said a word. Not after the funeral, not during all our casual catch-up calls, nothing. She let me live in that house, let me spend money I didn't really have, knowing full well I had no legal claim to it. And now? She wants me out. She gave me 30 days notice, served through the lawyer, to vacate her home. I don't even know where to start unpacking this, emotionally or legally. But trust me, that's just the beginning. After that letter came, I stared at it for hours. My hands were shaking. But it wasn't just the betrayal, it was the disbelief. I kept thinking, there has to be a mistake. Dad would never do that. Not to me. I couldn't sleep that night. I paced the hallways, the same ones I grew up running through in my pajamas. Every inch of that house had my fingerprints on it, my paint samples, my garden, my late-night tears on the back porch swing. And now I was supposed to believe it belonged to someone who hadn't lived in it for over a decade? The next morning, I called Emily. No answer. I texted her, just asking if we could talk. She replied 2 hours later with a cold, formal message, everything is being handled through my attorney now. I think that's best. I almost threw my phone. I sat down and went through all my records, receipts, home improvement invoices, utility bills. I had proof of everything I'd spent. $2,700 on plumbing, $9,000 on the kitchen remodel, $5,200 on roofing, even the custom stained glass window Mom always wanted above the stairs. I didn't spend all that money thinking I'd get anything back. I just thought, stupidly, apparently, that the house was mine in all but name. That it was a shared legacy. Turns out, it was a trap. Later that week, I met with a local lawyer, who was kind enough to give me a free consultation. And that's when I got hit with the worst part, I had no case. None. The will was valid. My name wasn't on the deed. And even with my expenses, unless I could prove Emily had promised me something in writing, which I couldn't, then legally, she could evict me. She was even entitled to back rent if she wanted to push it. I felt like the walls were closing in. But here's the kicker, the lawyer noticed something odd in the property transfer. Apparently, my dad had signed the updated will under power of attorney, granted to Emily, during a hospital stay when he was heavily medicated. That raised some red flags, but proving coercion or undue influence? It's nearly impossible. Especially with no other witnesses. Still, it planted a seed. What if Emily manipulated him into cutting me out? What if this wasn't just cold-hearted, it was calculated? And that's when I decided. I wasn't going down without a fight. So I did what anyone would do when they feel backed into a corner, I started digging. I went through my dad's old notebooks, calendars, emails. He was old school, kept everything written down, thank God. And in the back of one notebook, under a list labeled to-dos before I go, I found something that nearly made me cry. A line scribbled in his shaky handwriting, talk to Emily Ree, house. Make sure she doesn't sell it out from under her sister. That was it. No date, no context. But I knew what it meant. He had every intention of keeping the house for both of us. Maybe he didn't get the chance to fix the paperwork. Maybe Emily got to him before he could. I took a photo of the note and saved it in 3 different places. It wasn't solid legal proof, but it was something. Then, the rail bomb dropped. A few days later, I ran into my dad's former nurse at the grocery store. We hugged, chatted about how much she missed him. I didn't bring up the legal stuff, at first. But then she mentioned how odd it was when Emily showed up at the hospital that week. She said Emily had suddenly become very involved, always whispering with the doctor, always asking for alone time with Dad, even asking the nurse to step out during paperwork signing. One afternoon, she brought a man in a suit who she introduced as just a family friend, and they had Dad signing documents for over an hour. I didn't even know she'd done that. That's when I felt it in my gut. Emily had manipulated him. She used the last days of his life, when he could barely speak without coughing up blood, to convince him to rewrite his will. And worse, she probably got it notarized under those false pretenses. My dad loved us both, but he would never leave me with nothing. Not like this. I told the nurse everything. She looked stunned, but agreed to write a statement about what she witnessed. No promises, it might not hold in court, but again, it was something. And then, something weird happened. A burner email showed up in my inbox. No name, no signature. Just one sentence: ask Emily about the cash she pulled from Dad's account the week before he died. I froze. I hadn't even thought to check the finances. I didn't have access to his accounts, and by the time I thought of it, Emily had locked everything down. But now? Now I was starting to think this went way deeper than just a house. After getting that anonymous email, I couldn't sleep. I stayed up half the night thinking about everything that happened during those final weeks. Dad had been in and out of consciousness. Emily came and went like she had all the time in the world. And now, someone was telling me she had pulled money? I had no access to his bank info, but I remembered something. My dad kept all his passwords in a ratty old Rolodex. He always meant to move it to a digital vault but never got around to it. I hadn't touched it since he died. It felt like sacred ground. But now, I had no choice. I dug it out from the top shelf of his closet and flipped through until I found the login details for his checking account. I didn't even know if it was still active, but when I logged in, my stomach dropped. 2 transactions stood out right away. 5 days before he passed, Emily had transferred $25,000 from his personal savings to an unknown bank in her name. 2 days later, another $10,000. There was no note, no explanation. Just a cold, clean withdrawal of $35,000 right before he died. And the kicker? The balance now read $7.82. I felt like I couldn't breathe. She hadn't just manipulated him into rewriting his will, she'd drained his account while he was dying. This wasn't a sister being the responsible one. This was theft. This was planned. I took screenshots, downloaded statements, saved it all to an encrypted drive. Then I reached out to a probate attorney. Not the first lawyer I spoke to, a specialist this time. He took one look at what I had and told me, flat out, this could change everything. If I could prove that Emily coerced Dad, if I could tie the account transfers to fraud or abuse of power of attorney, I might be able to challenge the will. It wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be cheap. But it was possible. And that's when something even stranger happened. Emily called me. For the first time in weeks, she actually picked up the phone herself. No lawyer, no assistant, no send everything in writing. Just her voice, calm, almost too calm. She said she wanted to talk. In person. Said this had gone too far and we should work something out privately, before we both say things we regret. I agreed. But not because I wanted peace. I wanted answers. And maybe, just maybe, a confession. We met at a neutral spot, a little coffee shop our parents used to love. It felt almost surreal. I walked in and there she was, already seated, sipping tea like this was just some normal afternoon. Like she hadn't just tried to erase me from my own family's legacy. She smiled when she saw me. Not a kind smile. A calculated one. She didn't waste time with small talk. Said she knew I'd been digging and thought maybe we could reach a settlement before lawyers got involved. That was the word she used. Settlement. I asked her flat out, about the money. About the account withdrawals. About why she never told me about the will. And she didn't deny any of it. Instead, she leaned in and said something I'll never forget: you were never going to leave that house. Dad knew it, I knew it. You made your choice to stay behind, to play caretaker. That was your role. I earned the rest. She said it like she was explaining basic math to a child. She claimed the $35,000 was her compensation for all the years she missed out on being near our parents. 4 flights. Time off work. Emotional stress. Her words, not mine. She said Dad agreed to it. That he told her to take it. But when I asked if she had that in writing, she just shrugged. I sat there frozen. She saw the look on my face and changed her tone, like she realized she might have pushed too far. Then came the offer. She'd give me 6 more weeks to stay in the house if I agreed not to contest the will. And if I really needed money, she might be willing to reimburse me for the renovations, in part. It was such a thinly veiled bribe it actually made me laugh. She looked confused. I told her I'd think about it. Not because I was considering it, but because I needed time. I needed her to think I was backing off. When I left that cafe, I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I went straight to my lawyer with everything. The account records, the statement from the nurse, the photo of my dad's note in the notebook. And that's when we started preparing to file a formal petition to challenge the will. This wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the truth. Because for the first time, I saw Emily for who she really was. Not just a sister. A thief in a silk blouse. Filing the petition was the scariest decision I've ever made. My lawyer warned me, challenging a will based on undue influence is notoriously difficult. The burden of proof is on me. And Emily? She's not stupid. She's careful. Calculated. But something told me she was also arrogant. That maybe she'd left a crack somewhere in her perfect little plan. The official paperwork was delivered to her a week later. And I kid you not, within an hour of the delivery, my phone lit up with a barrage of texts. Emily was furious. Suddenly the calm, composed big sister was gone. She accused me of trying to ruin her life, told me our parents would be ashamed of me, said I was disrespecting Dad's final wishes. The guilt-tripping was textbook. But I didn't respond. I didn't owe her a thing anymore. Then came the next move. She tried to go nuclear. 3 days later, I got another letter from her lawyer, this time demanding I vacate the property within 14 days instead of 30. She claimed I was intentionally damaging the home and squatting without permission. I hadn't done anything of the sort, but she was playing hardball now, trying to intimidate me, pressure me into backing down. My lawyer filed for a temporary restraining order to stop the eviction until the case could be heard. It worked. The courts granted a stay. I had a legal right to remain in the house, for now. But then something incredible happened. While digging through more of Dad's old files, I found a receipt tucked into the back of his desk drawer. It was small, yellowed, almost faded. But at the top was the name of a private attorney, not the one Emily used to file the will. Curious, I called the number listed. And guess what? It was still active. The receptionist confirmed that Dad had, in fact, come in for a consultation just 2 months before his final hospital stay. He never finalized anything with them, but he did leave behind a draft of a will. And in that draft, the house was split 50-50 between me and Emily. That was the moment it all clicked. Emily must have known about that draft. Maybe Dad told her he was considering it. Maybe she found the paperwork. Whatever happened after that, she decided to make sure her version of the will was the only one that survived. But now I had proof that Dad intended both of us to inherit. And that changed everything. We subpoenaed the private attorney for a copy of the draft and any notes he had from the meeting. Emily didn't know yet. But the case was about to shift in my favor. The court date arrived faster than I expected. I hadn't slept in days. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my dad in that hospital bed, and Emily leaning over him, whispering God knows what. I kept wondering if he knew. If he suspected. Or if he trusted her so blindly he never thought twice. My lawyer and I arrived early. I watched people filter into the courthouse, some with calm faces, others clearly here to make someone pay. I wondered which category I looked like. Emily arrived late, of course. Designer sunglasses, pressed coat, and an expression like she was attending a brunch, not a legal hearing that could rip her entire plan apart. She barely glanced at me. Inside the courtroom, it all began with the basics. The judge reviewed the challenge to the will, the original version that left everything to Emily, and the draft we'd uncovered from the private attorney. That draft, dated just 8 weeks before Dad passed, was a bombshell. Emily's lawyer tried to claim the draft was irrelevant. Just a consultation, he said. An idea that was never acted upon. But then the judge asked a simple question: why did Mr. Dad's name visit another lawyer if he already had a valid will on file? That question hung in the air. My lawyer stepped in and presented the nurse's written statement about Emily bringing documents to the hospital and insisting the staff leave during their signing. That raised even more eyebrows. Then came the account withdrawals, $35,000 in total, transferred to Emily days before his death. Her lawyer objected, claiming it was a private gift. But without proof, it looked like coercion. Worse, it looked like theft. Then, it happened. While reviewing a set of emails submitted as evidence, just casual exchanges between me and Dad about the house, the judge noticed something odd in the metadata. A set of documents Emily claimed were from my dad's email had her IP address attached to the edits. In other words, she'd sent them to herself and labeled them as coming from him. The judge stopped everything. He asked Emily directly if she had ever accessed our dad's email account in the weeks before he passed. She stuttered. For the first time during this entire process, she looked nervous. She said she didn't remember. That was all it took. The judge ordered a deeper digital forensic analysis of the emails and suspended all eviction proceedings until the next hearing. The courtroom buzzed as people realized what had just happened. Emily might have forged documents. She tried to smile and play it off, but her hands were shaking as she gathered her purse. And me? I felt something I hadn't in months. Hope. Everything moved fast after that hearing. Once the court ordered a forensic analysis of Dad's email account, Emily panicked. She filed a motion to dismiss my challenge, said it was a waste of resources and emotionally disruptive. Her lawyer argued that the draft will and financial withdrawals were circumstantial and not proof of wrongdoing. The judge denied the motion. Meanwhile, my lawyer and I got the digital forensics report, and it was worse than we expected. Not only had Emily accessed Dad's email account, but she had also forwarded documents from it to herself, then edited the content before printing them. The signature on the supposed final will? It didn't match his signature from medical records or anything notarized during that time. The notary Emily used? Her college roommate. It was falling apart, piece by piece. That's when I got a text from a blocked number. Just one line. She forged more than you know. I didn't know who sent it. I didn't respond. But my gut told me there was still more to this story. 2 days later, we received a subpoena returned from the notary public who'd witnessed the signing of Emily's version of the will. The address she gave at the time? A coffee shop. She wasn't even in the hospital the day she claimed the will was signed. That was the turning point. My lawyer filed an emergency motion for the court to freeze all assets from the estate and order a full audit of financial activity in the last 6 months of Dad's life. Emily fought it, but the evidence was stacked too high. Her calm facade was cracking. She called me that night, sobbing. Not angry, not smug. Sobbing. Said she never meant to hurt me, that she just panicked after Dad talked about leaving the house to both of us. Claimed she didn't think I'd do anything with it and that it would have ended up falling apart without her protection. She even had the nerve to say she was trying to protect our father's wishes. I didn't say a word. I just listened. Let her ramble. Let her bury herself in excuses. Then I hung up. Because deep down, I think she knew it was over. But the court wasn't done yet. The next hearing would decide the fate of the estate, and whether criminal charges were on the table. The courtroom was silent when the judge walked in for the final hearing. This wasn't just about a house anymore. It had become a question of fraud, forgery, and theft. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from anticipation. After everything, the sleepless nights, the humiliation, the lies. I was finally going to hear the truth spoken out loud. Not just between lawyers and whispers, but in front of a judge. The forensic expert was the first to testify. He laid it out in plain language. Emily had logged into our dad's email account multiple times in the final weeks of his life. The will she submitted was modified using her own computer. The file history showed changes made after Dad was already sedated in the hospital. The digital signature on the PDF? Inserted manually, not scanned. Not signed. Then came the financial investigator. She walked the court through the account withdrawals, right down to the ATM locations and timestamps. One of the withdrawals Emily claimed our dad had authorized was made from a branch 30 miles away, while he was in a hospital bed, hooked up to an 4, barely conscious. And then came the nurse. She took the stand, nervous but clear. Said Emily insisted on private time with Dad, pushed hospital staff out, and returned with documents already filled out. The nurse admitted she thought it was strange at the time but didn't think it was her place to question it. But now? She knew something was off. Finally, the judge turned to Emily. He asked her one simple question: did you forge your father's will? She hesitated. Her lips parted, but the words didn't come. Her lawyer leaned in, whispered something. Then she looked up and said, no. But her voice shook. Even the court reporter glanced up. The judge paused, then nodded. I'll be issuing my ruling shortly, he said. But everyone already knew. 10 days later, we got the written judgment. The will was invalidated. Emily was stripped of sole ownership. The house was declared part of a shared estate, me and her, 50/50ths. The court ordered an audit of all estate-related funds. The $35,000 she took? She was ordered to pay it back. And because of the forged documents and misrepresentation to the court, the judge referred the case for criminal investigation. Emily was officially under scrutiny for fraud, elder exploitation, and forgery of a legal document. She hasn't called since. It's been 4 weeks since the judgment. I still wake up some mornings expecting another letter, another threat, another trick. But it's quiet now. The kind of silence that feels like standing on a battlefield after the smoke clears. Emily hasn't reached out. Not even a text. Her lawyer sent a short statement last week. She's cooperating with the investigation and has no plans to challenge the ruling. Translation, she knows she lost. And now she's trying to keep herself out of jail. As for the house? I walked through it the night after the ruling, barefoot, touching the walls like they were alive. Every room held memories, some warm, some sharp. My dad's favorite chair still sat by the front window. The kitchen tiles I chose, the garden I planted with Mom, the bedroom where I cried the night he died. It all belonged to me again. Not legally. Emotionally. My lawyer asked if I wanted to force a sale of the house so I could buy out Emily's half, or force her to accept a buyout. I could. I should. But I surprised even myself when I said no. Because I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of turning this home into a transaction. I filed for full ownership under adverse contribution and reimbursement claims. The court will likely grant it. I had the receipts, the sweat, the proof, and if she fights it, let her try. Meanwhile, the criminal case is moving forward. Emily's under formal investigation. Her notary friend already flipped, admitted she signed off without witnessing anything, just doing a favor. That alone could be enough to press charges. There's talk she might take a plea to avoid trial. I don't care. Let the system handle her now. I'm done carrying her mess. People keep asking me if I'm happy. I don't think happy is the word. I'm free. I stood up for myself. I defended my home, my name, my memory of the man who raised me. Emily tried to erase me, and instead, she exposed herself. And now? Now I'm repainting the front door. Bright red. The color of renewal. I don't know what'll happen to Emily. But I know exactly what happens to me. I stay. In the house my parents built. In the home I saved. And in the truth I refused to let die. Thanks for listening, Reddit. If you're ever faced with betrayal from someone who shares your blood, remember, family isn't about who you're born to. It's about who chooses not to lie, not to steal, and not to turn your grief into gain. I chose to fight. And I don't regret it for a second.